Well, as you know, my name's Doug Laurent. I've been a home inspector since 2010. That's kind of a baby for many of you folks out there who've been doing this for 30, 40 years, but I've had quite a bit of experience in the field. Since that time in 2010, I was also certified to do radon measurement through AARST NRPP. And back in 2016, my wife and I teamed up and she started doing radon testing for other home inspectors. And that's turned out to be a good operation for her. But also in 2019 in Minnesota, the state began to require radon measurement providers to be licensed. Well, as you can imagine, many home inspectors did not want to go through the radon training and the national radon test, which can be difficult for some. And it was kind of a boom for my wife's operation. So much to the point that we needed a system to help keep control of what she was doing. You know, she was inundated and was spending 20 hours a day trying to keep up with things, doing the invoicing and tracking the schedules, making sure she picked up all the monitors that she set up and get the billing right and so on. And then trying to keep the records straight for what the state was asking of us. So that's what led to home-based scheduling systems. And you'll hear a little bit more about that at the end of the show. I've been involved in a lot of small business operations, and my favorite part of things to do is to design and implement systems to improve efficiencies, improve quality in doing that, and of course, maximizing our profitability. And that's kind of what my emphasis is as we come toward the end of the show, is how do we stay current, or how do we stay in compliance with the AARST protocols and still make money? So the business of radon measurement, it's much more complicated than it seems at the start. Unless you're in an unregulated state and you're not very concerned about maintaining any kind of protocols, and you're simply going to set up your monitor, get a reading off of it, and put that number on a sheet of paper and give it to your client. That's acceptable in some states still. But most of us, I think, want to reach above that. And that's why we're part of InterNACHI. And that's why many of us are certified through AARST. But anyway, so how do we stay accurate and stay out of trouble or stay compliant? We need to get the job done efficiently. And in the end, we need to make money and stay organized so we're at peace with ourselves. But if we don't make money, we're not helping anybody, because we won't be testing for very long. So you folks are from different backgrounds. You're going to have, some of you are in licensed states, we call it. Some of you are or regulated states. Some of you are totally unregulated. Some of you have more lax regulations than others. But how do the AARST protocols impact your operation? Maybe you can think about these questions here. We don't pay attention to AARST protocols at all. We're in an unregulated state. We just provide a basic report with a test number on it. Or are you affected mostly because you're certified by AARST, and as part of your certification, you agree to follow the AARST protocols? Now, we all know that there's not much bite to that other than our word. And so sometimes it's easy to be a little lax on following through. Or are you completely following the AARST protocols and maybe even adding a few state regulations on top of those, because you face annual audits, and which could come with heavy fines if you're not following the rules. Or do you completely participate and follow the AARST protocols because you're strictly self-enforcing, because that's what you choose to do? And why would you do that? Well, I got certified for radon measurement through AARST back in 2010 before I did my first radon test. I just felt like I need some backing to be able to show people that I was qualified to do what I was doing. Plus, I wanted to know that I was doing it right. So first of all, from a marketing standpoint, you can stand out from your competition. They're not doing anything particular. Like I said, if you've been in this business for a little while, you've probably seen a lot of test reports that are pretty much nothing but a number on a sheet of paper. Some of you may remember this. I think they were called safety sirens. They were kind of a home radon test monitor that you could plug into the wall, and it gave a digital readout. One report I saw, a client showed me, it was just a picture of the radon result of that display. So that was his test report. But also, if you know you're following AARST protocols and can prove it, and you're feeling good about it, it's easy to stand up against challenges from realtors or sellers who say, well, how do we know your test is any good? From a liability standpoint, I suppose in some cases, someone might decide to charge you with or sue you for some reason because their test results were higher. Maybe they want you to pay for a mitigation system. Here you can go back again through your documentation, and you have good backing because you know you did it right. Here's the best reason, though, for you to feel good about what you do. I think most of us who are home inspectors that want to do a good job, we want to do it because we take pride in what we do, and we want to know that we're truly helping people. So knowing that you've done the job, you've done the job right, and you're following through on your word with AARST, you're following the protocols as you agreed to do, you're doing the best you can to protect the health of others. And I take great, I feel at peace when I know I've done things right, and I'm very unsettled if I haven't done that. So there are some of the reasons I came up with why you would voluntarily choose to follow the AARST protocols, and I'm sure many of you have others. For this webinar, I'm going to be referencing the AARST document for radon measurement of radon and radon decay products in homes. There's a link to it here. I don't know, AJ, if you can put that out to people for me. You can find that on the internet at that link. And the document looks like this. It's a copyrighted document, so I'm not going to take cuts and pieces out of it for this seminar, but this is free to everyone to view. If you want to download a copy, they are asking for, I believe it's $50 for this, but it's a very helpful document. It's kind of got a neat way to flip pages here. But it's also a searchable document. So if you're looking for something in particular, you can type it in your search bar and it'll pull up the different pages that apply to it. But you'll see those references to different sections of this as we continue through the hour here. Also, I'm going to be talking mainly just about the day-to-day testing operation. there are things that we have to do as part of the protocols. And the biggest one is, the hardest one for many of us, at least for me, was doing a QA QC plan. Now there are templates available now that are helpful for you to use. But it's part of it, and you can see the requirements in AARST at 8.1.2. And yeah, the AARST document here, you can see that it has a searchable bar here so that you can go down and find your place, find a specific topic in there. Also, we're talking about today, we're talking about testing with continuous radon monitors. CRMs or monitors, or refer to them as. I know some of you probably use EPERMs or other devices for testing, but I won't be talking about those because I don't use them and I'm not very familiar with them. And we'll also be assuming that for the most part, we're testing for a real estate transaction in a single family home or a single unit townhome or condo. We're going to review the testing protocols as we go through, and then we're going to take a look at the radon report and what information needs to be tracked and recorded. And then finally, we're going to cover how we're going to do this and still make money. You know, the basic record keeping is not complicated, but a notebook and pencil would do. But holy cow, you know, you'd be writing forever. And anyhow, we all know the shortcomings of that. So with computers, we've got other ways of doing that that are more reliable and easily referenced. And so we'll get into what that. Before we get into what the system needs to be, we need to know what that we're going to need to track. And in connection with the AARST protocols, you know, the scheduling is not a requirement. How to do your scheduling, how to keep track of your CRMs, that's not going to be part of the protocols. But it still is a huge challenge, and we'll get to that at the end. We need to keep a record of every test. And of course, the amount of detail that you are required to keep is going to depend a great deal on your state you're in. But for most of us, the minimum amount of things you need to keep track are listed here. You know, of course, the test address, the start and stop time, the technicians involved, test types. You know, as an initial test, post mitigation test, or follow-up test, mitigation type, and of course, device type, make, model, calibration, all that sort of thing. So it's just simple stuff, but it gets to be a lot. And if you're sitting down writing all this stuff down all the time, you'll be there forever. This is just a quick record of what our state requires us to keep and report on every quarter. You know, the pickup tech, they have us list each test by the pickup person. But they want to start and stop, and test type again, the mitigation system, none, active, passive. If there's a mitigation system, since the licensing took place, they want a tag number, a device type used, of course, the address, test results. Year of construction, building type, is it a commercial, single family home, etc., the floor, room use, real estate. So they're not asking for a lot of great detail. Some states want more, and more things that are harder to keep track of than this. Most of that information you can get off of your basic order form, plus a few questions for the technicians to answer. But when you're working with CRMs, you need to do duplicate tests. the rule calls for a duplicate test for every 10% of your total tests done in the organization, or every 10th test for each monitor. We're also looking for a chain of custody. This is one that I think a lot of people fall a little short on. We can get the monitor and list every test that's ever performed at what address. A lot of people will do that, but we need to know who had control of that monitor in between those test times. Did a technician pick it up at the office, set it up, and then another technician picked it up, but they brought it back to the office and left it there, and then another tech picked it up a day later and drove around with it for a few days, and then till they set it up on a test. So that's a little more complicated and time consuming to try to produce. I think keeping track of calibration dates on machines is a pretty simple thing to do. Here's a chain of custody report. Here you can see down here, Doug picked up this thing at Minneapolis, this monitor, it's 5862 is the serial number, and brought back to the office, and another tech took it out and set it up in St. Paul. That tech picked it up a couple days later, and the next day set it up in Cottage Grove, and so on. You can see how that chain of custody report really needs to look. Now, when your techs, they have their equipment, they're going out, they get to the house, they're ready to set up. Now they have to make some decisions as to where they're going to set up this test. And we need to track that. So what room they put it in, what level they put it in, the foundation type of that area. And then the AARST protocols call for one of three different ways of keeping track of exactly where that monitor is positioned, either by a photo, and the photo should be taken such that not that you can identify the monitor as much as where it needs to be a shot, a photo taken back far enough so you can place it in the room. It should include a doorway or the stairs or some identifying markings that let you know if someone wants to come and retest that house, they can put their monitor in exactly the same position. Photo seems to work the best for us. Other people have to do a floor plan because the state requires them, and they're looking. In that case, it's not just because they want to know where the monitor is. They want to know where the sump basket is. They want to know where the furnace is at and where the water heater is at. All those have to be included in their floor plan. I believe Illinois is one that requires that. Otherwise, a written description is acceptable in terms of AARST. And of course, that information is going to need to be in the report as well. A setup checklist. We're supposed to have a setup checklist. There's no requirement that you actually have a document to fill out and make a check mark that you did it. But you're supposed to have a checklist that your technicians are using to make sure they followed all the steps that they were supposed to in checking the thermostat, checking windows, and those sort of things. I know in our state, they really like it to have a solid hard copy or a digital copy checklist. And to be honest, we just started using a digital copy checklist for setup and pickup. And it's helped. It's helped improve what we're doing. We need, of course, record the CRM number used on the job, and again, whether a delayed start was used or not. Say AJ?
Yep, I'm right here.
Oh, you are getting my screen here this time, right?
Yep, we got your screen.
I don't see the green frame around it, but now before we even get a chance to head out to the job site to do this test, of course, we need to do prior notification for testing. We need to inform the person that's responsible for the building to get to let them know what is necessary to have a proper test. And of course, we are all familiar with some of those, and we'll cover them a little bit, what it means to have a closed house conditions. But obviously, most of it, the biggest thing is, are we going to get those windows closed 12 hours before the test starts? Probably the biggest one. And again, there's a reference to the AARST section there, 8.3 and 4, and exhibits 3, 4, and 5. They have some nice exhibits in there if you're looking for samples of what your form should look like or could look like for closed house condition notifications, for a compliance form for the sellers to sign, and so on. We need to post notices and at the job site after we've started the test, and we're supposed to make a request for a signature on a non-interference agreement. And if we do not get a signature on a non-interference agreement, we need to note that on the report. In this real estate transaction, we're not working for the sellers, so we seldom have direct contact with them. And so it's acceptable to go ahead and email the listing agent that non-interference agreement with the request for the sellers to sign. Of course, then we're going to walk around through the house, do the visual inspection. Again, mostly checking for closed house conditions, but also checking thermostats and ventilation and so on. Surveillance is not required according to AARST. Again, some states, I believe, require some anti-tamper devices when doing testing, but AARST does not. Here's a sample of a checklist. This is a pretty basic one, but it's the things that are needed at the time of setup. There are other questions that need to be answered at the time of pickup. Closed house conditions. Are the thermostat settings set properly? And HRB, vent status, and so on. Now, another item that is probably not paid attention to very much in testing, especially those who are in unregulated states. At least in Minnesota, this was almost never done. If you're looking at a house with square feet of the foundation footprint exceeds 2,000 square feet, you should be considering doing multiple test locations within that home. We know that radon levels can change quite a bit from one end of a house to another. And so the larger they are, the more opportunity there is for that to happen. And also you should consider a second monitor or a third monitor for each area of the home that's served by a different heating or cooling system. One area that's in a forced air system where the air is moving around more, it's evening out the radon levels and maybe even doing some ventilation in the process, might be lower than an area that's serviced with electric baseboard heat, for example. And finally, and this is the one that Minnesota doesn't just recommend, they require us to test different foundation types. Maybe you have a split entry house, or a 3-level split, for example, you might be placing one monitor in what would be considered the basement, one on a slab, and maybe even a third one over a crawl space, and maybe a fourth one over another slab. So it's not uncommon here to have 3 monitors, and even once in a while we're doing 4 or 5 monitors in a home. Well, that has a huge impact on your radon testing operation, doesn't it? It just requires more inventory of monitors, which of course is expensive. Most monitors are running, of the commonly used ones, most monitors are running roughly $100 or $1,000 a piece, and another $175 a year for calibration. It adds up, but it becomes part of the deal. It was a big, people were pretty upset about that, me probably the most, because it's just huge. Time wise too, you're spending that much more time with technicians in the field, placing these monitors, trying to make those decisions, analyzing building space, trying to figure out if there's a crawl space over that place or not, and is it a foundation. Face it, most of the technicians are not home inspectors, or a lot of technicians are not home inspectors. They're just techs that have learned how to do radon testing. They don't know that much about home construction, and that's the biggest challenge in training your people that are not a home inspector. And even as a home inspector, how many of you have been in a house for 3 hours and didn't find the crawl space till you're walking around with your clients showing them the house, and you realize that there's a door there? Happened to me more than once. So that's a big deal, and something you need to think about in how you're going to do that in your operation. Now, maybe the state, as like in our case, the state makes that decision for you, but even if you're not required to do it, do you want to do that out of good conscience? We have had basements that have tested lower than a slab on grade in the same house. It's not uncommon, and so it does make a difference. Well, here we'll get into some more details on the test placement. How many of you had a realtor tell you where you're supposed to place that test? They don't want you to test in the basement of that old house because the ceiling's only 6.5 feet tall. Well, if that space is or could be used as a livable space for a workroom, an exercise room, a lounge area, we should be testing it. And not many of the real estate agents have taken all the classes that so most of them have taken some classes. I give them that credit, but it's a little more involved than that. So when you're going through the house, finding that level that you're going to test on, or levels that you're going to test on, then trying to choose a room. Well, AARST has some thoughts on that. They'll tell you, test where people are likely to spend the most time. Okay. And then they also recommend placing the device where it will not likely be disturbed. Those two statements are in slight contradiction with one another, particularly if children and pets are involved. That becomes a challenge for sure. Sometimes we might place a CRM in an area that we wouldn't normally do it, but we got to keep it out of the way of the dog or cat or some kids. And so we can go ahead and do that. We just need to make note why we placed it where we did. Again, no one's going to follow up on your report, but it helps to put that comment in your report for those who might be questioning, what the heck did you do that for? And a lot of times mitigation, companies have to read these reports and they're trying to make sense out of why you did what you did, because they're in there mitigating a vacant house. Well, when you tested, the house wasn't vacant and you had challenges in front of you. Now, specific placement, when you get down to the AARST, we'll pop over here real quick because they have a nice picture. So this is the AARST document, and they're talking about where the placement should be. It's a nice little diagram to have there. Again, maybe you put it in some of your information on your website. But here it's telling us, of course, 3 feet from doors, exterior doors and windows, 20 inches off the floor. Some of us use the 5-gallon pails. Do they measure 20 inches? I'm not sure. A lot of them don't. We use tripods, so we always know we're exactly at the same height. 1 foot from an exterior wall of the building. And 1 foot below the ceiling. Well, with CRMs, we're not going to hang that thing from the ceiling probably. And then the last one, 4 inches from other test detectors and objects that are above or to the side of the detector. So I've been, challenged a couple times about having a monitor too close to an interior wall. Well, we only need to be 4 inches away from an interior wall, according to this, not 12 inches. And for your duplicate tests, your monitors must be placed more than 4 inches apart, or more than 4 inches apart, but less than 8 inches apart. So it's kind of sensitive where you place those. You want to make sure you get that right. If they're more than 8 inches apart, you still have a valid test there, but you don't have a valid duplicate test. You just have 2 readings. Here they talk more about the don't place these. These seem pretty obvious, okay, to most of us, but if you've been in the business at all, you've seen pretty much probably all of these done by other companies. Inside closets, cabinets, sumps, crawl spaces, nooks, or near heat sources. These are pretty obvious ones. Maybe the sunlight might catch you sometime if you don't want the sun to be shining on that monitor. And of course, by near drafts caused by fans or heating, air conditioning vents. And sometimes that is hard because you've done everything you can to get this monitor in a place where it's not in people's way. It's away from the window. It's away from the outside wall, all that. And then they're keeping it away from the kids. And now there's a heat register or a supply register right above you. And you're going, oh man. So what do? In some cases, you're going to have to find another place, or maybe you can divert that airflow somehow by taping some paper over the vent register or closing the vent register partially. You don't want to close it all the way. It will impact the test. And avoid placing detectors on or near objects that may produce radiation. Basically, we're talking about rocks and granite tops and so on, slate pool tables. We just covered that. Okay, so you're going to give notice to the homeowner about closed house conditions. Of course, all windows need to be closed, exterior doors, heating and cooling need to be set to 80 to 65 or 65 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And Now, that doesn't mean that the monitor is going to be in that temperature range. The temperature on the thermostat in the hallway on the main level could be 68 degrees, but it may be 55 degrees down in the basement when you're in, especially when you're in colder climate areas. Whole house fans, of course, those need to be off. Fireplaces, even gas fireplaces, they don't want those to be burned because it'll affect how much the heating or cooling system runs. I'm not in full agreement with that one, but it's the rule. Clothes dryers. What does excessive mean? What does that mean? I'm not sure what excessive means. It just depends. We have to use some judgment on that, I guess. Same way with ventilators, HRVs, ERVs. The new rule is set to the lowest seasonal ventilation conditions. I'm kind of familiar with a lot of different heating systems. I've been in this for a while, studied houses for many years. I'm still not sure what this means, what this setting is, because each ventilator type, we don't know how that was configured to run by the HVAC person, how they balanced it, and what model. And so, there's just many variables that we're not going to know about. So we just have to do our best on that one. When not to test. We don't want to test, of course, when we can't keep closed house conditions. Sometimes we know that by the attitude of the tenants or the occupants that there's going to be a problem. They're not cooperative. They're not happy about the whole situation. Or maybe it's a time when there's construction going on. They're trying to get things finished up to get the house ready for sale. And you're trying to get this test done. It's just not going to work very well. Or if there's other reasons for excessive traffic, which is very common in our real estate transaction, coming across the home where someone decides they need to move out that day. Kind of a problem. And then when closed house conditions create a health risk to occupants, that's going to be when the home does not have air conditioning and the exterior temperatures are just unbearable to have the house closed up, and in fact could be dangerous. Here are some conditions, some circumstances when you might things might not be exactly what they should be, but you can still go ahead and test. You just need to note that in the report. Maybe the ventilation system isn't set right. The furnace fan is set to on instead of auto. Some of those things aren't significant enough to not test, but they just are notable. Same way with unusual device placements and so on. Delayed start, of course, we've all been familiar with that. The biggest one, again, doors and windows haven't been shut. You get to the house set up, the windows are wide open. The seller tells you all the windows are closed, but literally had this happen to me. I was talking to the gentleman. He told me all the windows in the house were closed. I'm looking over his shoulder and 2 windows were open behind him. It's really hard to, what do you say? Sorry. But if a mitigation has been installed in less than 24 hours prior, then you need to wait for that set a delay start. The pickup checklist ties to the report requirements. So you're going to have all these questions, and they're basically, you need to, this is the information that needs to be included on the report. These obvious ones: test load, address, make and model of machine, the results of the test, the name of the technicians. Now you might have 3 technicians' names on here: the setup person, the pickup person, and the reporting person. And you have, again, things we've talked about that need to be in the test. HRV settings, radon mitigation type, and so on. Now, AARST has some paragraphs that they would like used, or you can reword these, I guess, but if the test result is this, they want a statement to this, something to this effect: fix the building if the test results indicate occupants may be exposed to radon concentrations that meet or exceed the EPA action level of 4.0, and so on. So that's kind of a paragraph. You can get that right out of the book here, the document, AARST document, and it's 8.5.9. And here's another paragraph about what needs to be done if the test results fall between 2 and 4. And finally, of course, if the test results less than 2. Now, here's kind of a sample report. That meets the AARST protocols. This test here was for a duplicate test, so it's a few more pages because you have CRM data for both monitors included in this report. But at the top of the report, there's a summary of what everybody really is interested in. Here it's talking about the average of the test being 4.7, and it's a duplicate test, kind of explains what that's about. And then again, the recommended action is in the paragraphs we found. Here we have a building year, test type, mitigation type, and what kind of test performed. Is it a single test, duplicate test, or multiple locations? And your first monitor with the make and model, serial number, and so on, and of course its location. A photo here helping with that location. And here is the device results, the hourly readings, and the second monitor here, and those results. Now, all those checklist questions we were talking about are summarized here. The pickup questions are listed down this side, the setup questions are down on the left side, and the pickup questions on the right. Some of these questions only pertain to the pickup, and some only pertain to the setup. So that's why you have some blanks on one side. But the questions that are common to both, such as passive air supply status, was it clear in both conditions? Temperature setting, was the thermostat set the same, and so on. Or a big one here is, was it occupied at setup, but it was vacant at pickup? That could be a cause of concern that people were moving out of the house during the test. And this is just a summary page. Again, this is from AARST. It lists all the different levels of radon and the actions to take. And part of that, and most states are required to have their Department of Health information down here so people can contact and get more information. And of course, the testing company information, the different technicians who were involved in setup, pickup, or the report generation. So that's what a report can look like. As you can see, if you do include the data. Now, the hourly test data is not required to be included in your report. It's just, you do have to be able to provide it to people if they ask for it. So unless you want to be answering phone calls and digging out data, you might as well include it in your report and be done with it. Again, here's some state requirements. You can see Minnesota's columns. They only go up to R. Illinois goes up to V, but they actually have a few more that extend beyond that. And quite a bit of record keeping. So I know I've gone kind of fast. I've been talking too fast, but it's a lot of information to take in and what you need to do to keep your radon operation up to par. So how does your operation measure up with the standards? Holding to the AARST standards and to maintain profitability, that's the difficult part. Because you can't have your techs in a house for 25 minutes setting up or picking up and really come out in this deal. Most of the time, you need to keep that down to about 15 minutes in most cases. So what options are available? Well, we've all seen Google worksheets and Zoho, and those can work. I've seen some really good ones. The guys who really spend a lot of time pulling together these documents that help them keep track of all this stuff. We did some Zoho stuff at the beginning. It just did not work well. It was hard for the techs. It was easy to delete stuff and get lost in the system. But if you bear with me a little bit, I would love to show you a little bit what home-based scheduling systems can do to help keep track of that. We got through the hard part of the hour, talking about all these rules and regulations. It's never fun, but it does help remind us that we do have obligation to pay attention to the rules so that we're doing things right and giving people fair and accurate testing. We have a system that's a scheduling system, and it's a calendar, and it also functions as a technician's app where they they get their routes from it, they enter their data into it and generate their report. If you take a look at this calendar here, the columns here are, each technician has a column for each day. You'll notice this technician has 2 columns. That's because they do 2 services. This system does track all the ancillary services and if you needed to, but today we'll talk about the radon. When the radon orders come in, they come in with a paired set of appointments, a green setup and a red pickup. That's automatic. They're tied together. You can't forget. You'll never forget your pickup. These orders can come from multiple places. You can put a link on your website and retail clients can order directly from you. You can, if you're working with other home inspectors, you can give them a login and they can place orders online and their orders just pop in up here. It saves you a lot of work. Otherwise, if you're using ISN, Spectora, or Next Inspect, you can hook that up here, integrate that, and these orders will automatically pop up here for the services that you choose. We'll take a look over here. This is the route for today for this organization. You can pop open a map and see that, you can see the little balloons popping up and down on the right in the map. So you can try to get an organized route for that person. And if you're not sure, like we've got this order to put on the calendar up here, we're not sure how far it is from Plymouth to this Minneapolis stop. We can click on those 2, and here we have the route up here. It's 28 minutes. If we need to look at the listing for some reason, maybe they didn't put the age of the building in there, you can click on this little magnifying glass and then the appointment, and it pops you over to the Google search, and you can decide if you want to go to Zillow or the realtor.com or whichever one you want. But once you get the appointment, when you hover over it, you'll see that yellow box that highlights when the inspection is. But we're going to set this up here for this. Well, we'll just set it at 4 o'clock here. And you can see that red bar, the dark red bar over there is the contingency expiration date. The pink bar says that's the earliest we can pick that up. That's the 48-hour mark. We'll accept that appointment. And as a scheduler, see, they didn't put the year in here. I can click this thing, but I'm not going to take the time. As a scheduler, you have tasks to do. You know, somebody has to make appointments to get into the home. We can click on that box here, go ahead and cut and paste this into showing time or however you do your appointments, and click on the access appointment was requested. Once the approval comes through, you can go ahead and put your lockbox code on there. And we'll go and do the rate, we'll do the pickup one while we're here anyway. And we need to notify, remember, we needed to notify the listing agent that this test is coming, and we need to ask for them to sign a compliance agreement, non-interference agreement. If your places orders came in through Next Inspect or Spectora ISN, the listing agent information is already there, and you just hit this button. It sends that form out with a link to the seller can sign the agreement online, and then that agreement gets stored into the database here. And you have a record. If anyone ever asked, did you notify those guys? You have it here. And when you get a little black dot on there, you know it's been signed. Well, you can see how few people still sign these things. So these appointments are in place and ready to go. Up at the top here, you'll notice it says how many CRMs are available. It tells how many CRMs this technician should have started the day with. And down here, if the day wasn't over already, it would tell us how many monitors were going to be available. So we knew if we could take an extra order at the end of that day. So that's kind of the calendar part of the program. The phone app is where kind of the work takes place. You'll see here the technician can see their whole route for the day. Those little check marks tell you that the appointment's done. Of course, the red box appointments are pickups, the green ones are setups. And we can see our appointment down here at the bottom. Hasn't been check marked because we haven't done it yet. And we come to our appointments here. I should show you back here. Of course, you can tap on the address there. It takes you to Google. It gives you the lockbox code and that sort of thing. Here, there's a checklist set up in here, and you get to choose which questions go in your checklist. And you get to choose whether you use it at all or if it's required or just optional. Here it's required, so I need to enter these or I won't be able to enter any CRM numbers. We just go ahead and pick those questions that we've set. And save that. And then we can go ahead and start the test. We can add a CRM here. And we can enter the number. And we're going to do a duplicate test or side-by-side test in the basement. On the lowest level, the foundation is going to be a slab on grade. And then we're going to go ahead and take a picture of our monitors. Save that. The things that happen when you do test companies. Well, that's embarrassing. I've got my monitors set up incorrectly. But how about that? I've tested that. I don't have time to get that corrected. We can go into our test company here. Or okay, so there's our side by side. And again, it's gonna automatically ask us to include the second monitor. So we'll select the one with the most tests since it's last side by side. There we have our monitors. Apologize for that. And we can set our mitigation type here. And we can also say, maybe it was a delayed start. We just touch delayed start and we email the client. It lets them know that it's delayed start, but it also puts an alert on the calendar. So the scheduler knows that they have to adjust the scheduler has to adjust the pickup time. Here you can see the CRMs that I added there. So we've done the setup. Go ahead a couple days and do the you need to put it on the right technician. Oh, the pickup test. We'd read the monitors and get the data off of the machine and save it to our phone. We'll enter the test results here. And it'll give us our relative percent difference there, 3.1. And then we just need to go ahead and generate the report. We've saved the CRM data to our phone. We can add a cover photo if we wanted to. We could have taken that picture on our way in. And then we add the CRM data here. And if we're doing a floor plan, we could add that there. The second monitor we add here. And then we go ahead, we can put more photos, additional photos in here if we want. And we can go ahead and answer the field questions for the report. Now this gets to be a little longer. questions because there's more things that are important here that need to be included. And then we hit generate report, and there's your report. Now, if I wasn't fumbling around, we would have had that a little quicker, but there's the same report that you saw a demo of earlier with all the data on there. To send it to the client, I just have to hit send report, and it goes off in an email and gives them a link to the report that they can gather up online. Now you might say, why do we do that? That pretty a small amount of time that the technicians really need to spend in the field getting that done. And from that information, then they are able to generate the report, say your state report. Simply go ahead to Minnesota reporting for January. I can click on this button and here's the report for the state. They want it in a CSV form, so we export it to that, and they want it by technician. So I grab one person's test for the month and I take that and cut and paste it into their form, and I'm done with my reporting. And of course, there's a lot more information and details here. This has a full invoicing function and so on, if you're going to use it for other testing for other home inspectors. But I can promise you it'll save you time and money. Here's where you would go and get your, you can view the test history for this monitor for every test you've ever done on it. And the chain of custody. You can see that's right here. You saw that earlier. And the rest of the information, you click on this bar, you have a place to keep notes on the monitor. If it's doing weird things, you can make a record of that for yourself. You can lock the monitor so it's not counted in the CRM totals that I showed you on the calendar. And up at the top here, again, it shows where all your monitors are located, how many you have available, how many are within 17 monitors are in service that are within 5 days of their calibration expiring. Down here, you'll see how many monitors are. This is the test count since their last duplicate test. So we can see we have a bunch of them, but these are grayed out here because they're locked, because they're out for calibration. And again, if it's been more than 180 days since a monitor has been on a duplicate test, the next test it comes up for, the technician's going to be prompted for a duplicate. Again, I apologize for the hiccup on my CRMs. I grabbed the wrong ones. And if you have any questions about the system, I'd love to help you with that. But if you have questions about just radon testing in general, I could be happy to share that with you as well. We will stop that there. Again, I apologize. I went through that 5 times today, but anyway, that's how life goes with us for us sometimes. And I'm sorry, I got distracted by a question over here. But I look forward to hearing from you. I think you can have a link to my email address. You can look me up, I believe, since I'm on InterNACHI. and let me know. I'm going to take a look here at some of your questions. I see someone had some tampering examples here. Anyhow, I hope you all have a good evening tonight, and hope your businesses do well. And I hope you can maximize the profitability of your radon operation, because it is a fun business and you can make good money on it. Have a great night. Thank you.